We live? Oh, Hangouts makes us wait every time to find out if we're live. And right when I go, are we live? It then pops up. So that means everybody got half of are we live? Hello, everybody. It's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find your in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio here at Game Audio Hour. It's episode 51, dudes, and one more episode. Next week, we will have done a year's worth of these episodes, even though I think we already crossed our anniversary. I'm not counting it until we get to episode 52. Can you believe that? What do you think, Vince?
Oh man, that is exciting. I can't believe it's already been a year. But yeah, here's to more than just more than just a year. Let's keep on going. 2 years, 3 years? How long are we going to sustain this?
We're going to be like the New York Times of this. You know, we're just going to go for. There are going to be family members that inherit this show that we won't even meet.
Oh man, yeah, this will be fun. This will. It's always exciting to see how these things will change. 2 years from now, we're going to look back at the stuff that we're saying and think, wow, why did we recommend that? Or, oh, wow, that actually was a pretty smart thing I said. Or,
I won't be saying that about myself, that's for damn sure. What's cool about it, Alex, is that I collect magazines, and I can't not collect magazines. Like, I can't go digital. I thought going on the iPad would be really cool to go digital, but I still want the magazine. And I hold on to them, and sometimes I'll go back to, like, old computer music issues or old Sound on Sound issues, and I'll think, my God, do you remember when, there was no dongles for any of the software that we use? You didn't need any of this crap, And it's funny to read those old issues and catch up. Maybe we'll do that, right, Alex? And you can host it. Like, you've got the great accent. You could be like sitting in a leather chair with a pipe hosting our ancient episodes.
Sounds brilliant. Yeah, my vice was Future Music, the British magazine Future Music, and I started on issue 2. I actually still have issue 2 at home.
Wow.
And what was in issue 2? So that was the 90s, I guess. I remember, I think the JP 8000 had just come out.
Oh, that's great.
No, it was before that. I think it was before I think the Akai samplers, I think they'd just done the S900 or something like that.
Wow.
And the music of the day was like KLF and the Future Sound of London and Orbital and 808 State. And sorry, there's mostly British bands, but it was Future Music based in the UK. But yeah, those were the days. And it's like MIDI was this magical, wondrous thing that could connect these devices together and create music. And like we sort of hinted on it a while before. And actually, because today's topic, we're going to be talking about NAMM and all the wonderful things you saw. But one thing we might touch on today actually is the is MIDI itself, because really, isn't it amazing? I mean, despite its limitations, we are still using pretty much the same thing now as we were back then with Future Music issue 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. But anyway, I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good. We had a blown up water heater. Replace that. That's when you really wish you rented and didn't own your home. Those are ridiculously expensive, and that's the exciting things in my life. What about you, Vince? How you feeling? You were sick, Vince. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I've got these wisdom teeth. Every now and then they like to remind me that they're there. And I finally shut them up, and I can actually go about my day without my head being on fire. So I'd say that so far, this week is a win.
Did you have them pulled?
No. It's just, I had to shut it up. My wisdom teeth actually do fit in my mouth, but I have a really nasty cold. Just that extra swelling, extra pressure, and I imagine most people would just be like, extra sinus pressure. Take some acetaminophen and be on your way. For me, I just got to knock myself out in order to get rid of the pain, unfortunately.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're better. Sorry it was bad.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm ready. I'm ready to take on the day.
So I'm going to start today with a trivia question, and I'm wearing a shirt. I want to know if you guys can identify what that is.
So we better read it for everybody who says Gygax.
Well,
that would be Gary Gygax.
Ah, you guys passed.
Gary Gygax is. Can't even remember who Gary Gygax is, but I know the name. It's a role-playing game thing, right?
What? Yeah, you're talking about the inventor of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the guys at TSR, and yeah.
Well done, you, because I've found that there's a limit to nerddom in the game industry. Like, if I say to somebody, dude, I love D&D. I came up on D&D. That was what it was all about. When I was at Neversoft, there were some guys who were like, man, Kyle is a nerd. And I would think, you're making video games. Why am I a nerd? You know, and D&D is like the edge of that. Well, they used to have a magazine, speaking of magazines, which is Alex's comment reminded me of it. They used to have a magazine called Dragon Magazine. They also had Dungeon Magazine.
Yeah.
And I collected those for years, and they stopped making them. And one of the sons of Gary Gygax has brought them to life, but he can't call him Dragon anymore. He calls him Gygax, so I ordered a shirt to support him.
Oh, wow.
So go get that magazine. It's like having Dragon again. It's pretty awesome. And on that twisted segue that I do so badly, speaking of MIDI, at NAMM I got to hang out with a guy who invented it. That was pretty cool. Dave Smith.
Wow. The man, the legend.
Yeah,
Dave Smith.
I'm probably going to mess this up, but he used to be Sequential Circuits, right? And he lost like the rights to the name or something and had to call everything Dave Smith, and now he's got the Sequential Circuits name back.
Yeah, so apparently, I saw a video that the story was that I think the Roland CEO wrote to the Yamaha CEO, as they do, and just said, you know, konnichiwa, and o genki desu ka, and then just said, you know, the old Sequential Circuits title, you may want to give that back to Dave. What do you think?
Really? That's nice.
Wow.
If I did that.
So so yeah, basically, the Roland boss wrote to the Yamaha boss and suggested it, that, you know, it's about time, you know, you may as well. I mean, Dave is a living legend. Let's give him back the name for Sequential Circuits.
Okay.
I think that there was some trademark issue with the actual name Sequential Circuits, so he couldn't use it, so he had to call it Sequential. I'm not sure about that.
Gotcha. Well, I think it's I can't say that I paid close enough attention when I was playing the Prophet, whether it said Dave Smith on it or his latest Prophet, but I think it said Sequential Circuits, and it was pretty exciting.
So what's he actually like to talk to? I mean, it's amazing to actually, he is a legend.
So NAMM, this is my first time going as often as I've wanted to go, and the whole thing is like meeting, you know, your heroes, and they're just standing there. It's like if you were huge into movies and Brad Pitt was standing at this booth and, you know, Jack Nicholson standing at that booth, and you can just walk up and just start talking to him and he'll tell you about his latest movie. It was the same thing. I walked into the Moog booth, and there was standing, I don't want to mess up his name. I was going to say Malcolm Cecil. Is it Malcolm Cecil? He's an old jazz guy, and he's now supporting the new Moog modular. I think it's Malcolm Cecil. Why do I want to say Malcolm Cecil? Anyway, I've never met this guy, and I only learned about his history recently, but he's a big supporter of Moog, and since they've re-released the Moog modular, apparently he was a big user of that, and so he flew in from England or wherever he lives, and he was doing an interview, and I happened to walk up right at the tail end of the interview, and he just looked at me and said, "Hi, how are you? I'm, you know, what's his name? I've got to make sure it's Malcolm Cecil so I don't sound like an idiot."
I think that sounds right.
And so I had luckily, it's Malcolm Cecil. I had luckily read up on him a couple of weeks before because I was watching the Moog videos and stuff and trying to learn about anybody in the videos that I didn't recognize. But two things happened to me that I was really starstruck about is I got to meet Dieter Doepfer, and he's a big influence on me, and the machines that he uses I have a lot around here. And I walked in with the group I was with to NAMM, and walked through a hallway, and boom, walked out the doors, and there's the Doepfer booth. And I was like, whoa, this is a good start. So I go up to the Doepfer booth, and I'm looking at his Eurorack modular, and I look over, I'm standing beside him. He's just looking at it with me also, and I'm like, whoa, hey, and I shake his hand, and my friend's like snapping all these pictures, and we just talked and laughed, and he's known for being a really, really friendly guy. As a matter of fact, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but most manufacturers had a booth to themselves, and there would be some sort of wall that separated them from the next booth. And he had that as well, but what he surrounded himself with were all of his competitors. You know, Make Noise was there, and AMS was there, and all these people who make Eurorack stuff, all right beside him. And I thought, it really is true that he's a nice guy. So I was over talking to somebody else, and he's one of the guys that works for one of the other Eurorack manufacturers. And he said that, well, this is what he said. It seemed a little large to me in the tail, I got to be honest, but this is what he said. He said that Dieter paid for this whole section of booths and invited everybody to come share in them, didn't charge them.
Wow.
His own competitors. And I thought, man, if he did that, that is pretty awesome. And he's such a nice guy. He just talks and has fun. And I walked away, and he called me back, and he handed me a poster and a book, and he's got this like diary of how he came up with all these synths, and like literally their wiring guide is in this diary. Like, wow, so if I want to make my own Doepfer, I can just, copy his schematics. He doesn't care.
Didn't he do a rack mount called the something 404?
404.
DS4, if it was a drum machine, was it? That was a long time ago, though, I think. It's not Eurorack. It's like a standard 1U rack thing. I think it was a drum machine called the 404.
I don't remember. I'm not seeing it in a search. He does do non-Euro-racky stuff. Like right here is, if I can get it, right here's the Dark Energy.
Wow, look at that.
It's basically his A100, but it's in a wooden case. It's black instead of white. This is an amazing synthesizer. It's a single oscillator. But the chipset, he ran out of the chips for these, so he had to resupply with some different chips, and now he releases the Dark Energy 2, and I'm really stoked that I jumped on it and got a Dark Energy 1. Some people say the Dark Energy 1 sounds better than the Dark Energy 2. It's Doepfer. It's going to sound good no matter what. So I was really excited. Huh? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's the Doepfer MS404 was a TB303 emulator from maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
The other thing that I have of his that I really love is the Regal work. Have you guys seen the Regal work? It's a sequencer that I can't do without. It's a slider-based sequencer, REGELWERK. I love that thing. Anyway,
yeah, I see it.
I love Doepfer equipment. It's really solid. And so I meet Dieter Doepfer. That's pretty cool. And I see all this Eurorack stuff from all these people, and it's just wonderful stuff. Make Noise, I'm a big fan of. Of course, AMS, I'm a big fan of. And I just started walking through the place and walked over to the SSL booth. And as you guys know from our conversations, I love to work on SSL boards. And they've got these new, gorgeous $350,000 boards out. I'm like, wow, can I get one of those? I don't need it, but I'll take it. And but I got tired. I started getting tired. If I don't have 2 coffees, I get a headache. So we walked out. This is my grand story. So we walk out of the NAMM is really big. They use a lot of the Anaheim convention, and they have this kind of like this carpeted hallway, very large hallway that wraps around the whole thing, and that's where they put like kiosks and stuff like coffee. So I walk out to get some coffee with the guys I'm with, and there's these 2 glass booths against the wall that are holding guitars, and being a guitarist, I obviously look over there, and sitting between the glass booths on a chair on his phone is Herb Deutsch. Herb Deutsch and Robert Moog are who created the Moog synthesizer.
Okay.
And he's there on his phone. Nobody's talking to him. Like, they don't even know who it is. And I am giddy as a schoolgirl, like I saw the Beatles for the first time. I'm in line for coffee, and I go, oh, my God, that's Herb Deutsch. I'm telling the guys I'm with. I'm like, you don't know what that means, what this guy has done for synths. And they're all like, they got the long hair and the metal and the, spikes on their jackets. I totally look like I don't belong with those guys. And I'm like, but that's Herb Deutsch. You don't understand. I'm so excited. So my friend Sam goes, well, go talk to him. I'll hold your place in line. That kind of goes against my ethics. I don't want to come back to the line and kind of cut technically, even though somebody held the place for me. That always makes me uncomfortable. And secondly, he's obviously doing something to chill and not, be bothered. And we are right outside the Moog booth, so he's probably got to go in there and do some talk and get himself ready for it. These are the thoughts that go through my mind. I'm not going to bug him. That was good enough that I got to see Herb Deutsch. Although I did take a picture, and you have to zoom in really far to see him through the glass case.
Oh, man.
I totally stalked Herb Deutsch. So he's like 82 or 3 now.
Wow.
Yeah, look him up. Deutsch, Herb Deutsch. Amazing guy. So I'm standing in line. This line is particularly long, and Sam disappears. And he comes back and he goes, hey, that Herb guy's a real nice guy. And I'm like, I said, no, you didn't talk to Herb Deutsch. No, you didn't. He goes, yeah, I did. He goes, I told him all about you. He wants to meet you. And I go, you are so full of crap right now. He's like, yeah, I told him about Guitar Hero. Now, Sam doesn't understand, he's not in the video game industry. And so I'm like the Queen of England when it comes to him with video games. And I explained to him that I work on teams with lots and lots of people. Not one person is responsible for a successful video game. But he goes around talking about me like I came up with the Guitar Hero idea. I implemented the Guitar Hero idea. I didn't need any help making the Guitar Hero. That's just what Sam does. So when he goes over to meet Herb Deutsch, as I do, quotes in the air, because I don't believe him for 1 second, he tells him all about Guitar Hero. And this is the guy who, this is the guy from Guitar Hero. That's the way he describes me. So we get my coffee, and I walk back, and Herb Deutsch isn't there anymore. And I'm thinking, thank God. I don't know if Sam's full of shit, but I don't want to deal with this weirdness, right? So I'm getting ready to walk back into the center, and Sam sees Herb Deutsch coming, and he goes, "Hey, Herb, here's Kyle. Here's Kyle, Herb." So Herb's wife walks up to me, and she says, "Oh, you're the Guitar Hero guy." At this point, I'm like, what do you do? And she goes, "Oh, we wanted to meet you." And Herb goes, "Oh, I'm really happy to meet you. Did you?" And then I just kind of diverted it immediately to, let's talk about synths, because one thing I feel very strong about is that there aren't enough people who know, even how to work a subtractive synthesizer, let alone an additive or, anything. And there's so many sound designers in this business that if they just knew that one little piece of information about how to work a subtractive synthesizer, it demystifies so much machinery in the game industry and in the music industry for people, but they just don't go out and learn it. And I was basically saying to Herb that, I teach classes, I teach kids, I teach friends, I don't charge money, I just go out and show people. I'll take my Moog and my little semi-modular I've got set up with Moger Fogers, and I'll go places and show people and patch things. And we were talking about, he asked me how I get them, kind of interested right away. And, I said that I try to figure out what video games they were into in their youth, and it's usually something Nintendo-y or like Donkey Kong or something. And you can Pac-Man, and you can create those sounds really easily on a Moog synthesizer. And so that's where I start usually. But it was really cool to talk to him, and he was so welcoming and friendly, and he never said to me once, "Hey, I got to get going." I was the one who was concerned about using up too much of his time. I actually cut myself off and said, "It was great meeting you. I know you probably got places to go. Thank you for hanging out." But it was really exciting seeing him.
That's fantastic. Actually, just on an aside there before you go on, that's what you said about learning the basics of synthesis is really, really true. It's like Vince always talking about learning the basics of audio programming as a helpful tool to, sound design in games. Learning the basics to synthesizer programming is a very helpful tool for mixing, ironically. Like just understanding how sound goes together and how to influence a sound in a certain way can really help you understand, the tools that we use for mixing. Anyway, go on. Back to NAMM.
True. So NAMM. So what was NAMM for me? NAMM was really exciting. We actually went 2 days in a row, and I have to recommend next year that people go on Sunday, because you get pretty much the same amount of hours. I think they shorten it by 1 or 2 hours between Sunday and Saturday. But Sunday was compared to Saturday, was like an old ghost town. It was probably half the people there. So on Saturday, we didn't get to see everything we wanted to look at. Or if we did get to see it, it was, by looking over people and jumping. But Sunday was the killer day where everything was great. Now it opens on Wednesday or something, so you can go Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's probably good too. I only went Saturday and Sunday. So there was a lot of stuff that came out, a lot of neat things. They did a new beat step. Have you guys seen the beat step? They did a new Arturio's releasing a new beat step. This is their old one, and although it's $99 and it's super cool, it actually has some downsides to it. Like, all of these knobs start with a tone, and so you have to keep twisting until you finally find the tone. And if it's chromatic, it'll increment, very slowly through the octaves, and you're just trying to get to the tone I want. It can be a little bit of a kind of like a throwback to the old-fashioned way of being a little bit of a pain in the butt. it's almost better. But you know, that's I got to be fair to say that they set up a bunch of chords inside here, or excuse me, scales inside here that you can just stick to, like a fifth scale or a Dorian or something like that, so that these knobs can only hit the notes that would be in the Dorian mode. You know what I mean? So it simplifies it if you dig in a little deeper. But again, there's no screen, so you don't know what mode you're in. You have to hold down a bunch of buttons and read lights that come on to determine what you're doing. So they came out with a new one, or they're coming out with a new one in April, and it can run a bunch of synthesizers. So back here it's got 3 CVs for synthesizer 1, and you can just push gate or push pitch to, you know, some synthesizer, and it'll follow this sequence. And then they got synthesizer 2, same thing. Then they got a bunch of gates for drum machines, and then they've got clock that you can pass out, and they've got in MIDI, of course, as well. And then in here, there's a control area. They extended the length of this thing. There's a control area to choose which synth you want to edit. So you would hit like synth 1 and then go down here on the buttons or the knobs and change what you want. Go to synth 2, and you could use the same buttons and knobs, obviously, to change what you want. So I was really excited about that. Another one that came out that's really exciting is it's out now, I think. It's rather expensive, but they've got a less expensive, smaller version. It is the Stephen Slate Raven, which is basically a giant iPad the size of your kitchen table, and you can use your hands and do. And I don't like that it's not tactile, to be fair, but I do like that it's so big, because when your fingers travel, they still stay on the faders. Even though you may be pushing up and your fingers slightly traveling, it's still staying on the faders. The other thing I liked about it was I use Pro Tools a lot because you can't get away from it. And there's so much mousing that happens in Pro Tools. What I enjoyed about this Stephen Slate Raven was that I was just touching these things and they were popping up, and I was grabbing a plug-in and I was dragging it to a different position in this rack. You know, I really liked that workflow. I had to admit it. And I even went there with a negative kind of connotation on it. I thought, oh, there's no tactile feedback. It's just a giant iPad. It's ridiculously expensive. And as I sat there messing with it, I thought, you know, I could sit here and do mixes really well. If nothing else, I like the angle of it. You know, it's at this kind of 45-degree angle, and it was much easier than a typical board, which is, you know, almost a flat angle, and you have to stretch out your arms to hit things, to tweak knobs. I liked that. I saw... oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's really interesting, you know, that idea. Like the Raven, I saw of course, it's way over my head in terms of needs and cost and anything. There's no way I'd ever need anything like that. But it's quite an interesting idea. The issue, of course, is that a lot of times mixing engineers need to see what they're doing, seeing musicians performing in front of them, and have their hands on faders or knobs at the same time. So you know, as it is with all kinds of touch interfaces, the one big deficiency is you have to be looking at it all the time, because otherwise your finger drifts off, and then you're changing all, you know, other stuff that you didn't intend to change. So it's a really interesting idea, and it was kind of inevitable, wasn't it? You know, it was going to happen at some stage, and of course, big respect to Stephen Slate for getting there first, but. I just wonder whether, like, how practical it will be for, you know, professional mixing engineers.
Yeah, you know, along those lines, I'm used to that chair lift. As a matter of fact, on my chair here, I have an Aeron chair, and I've got it set so that the back will pop up when I release some of the weight from it, because I'm always reaching forward on the board. And it's funny that I've created this kind of ergonomic, and that Aeron even supplies that functionality in their chair to kind of pop you up and get you to reach for something far on your desk. But I'm used to it, and I've been doing it since the 80s, and I got to tell you, when I was sitting at that Stephen Slate Raven, I was like, you know, this is fantastic. You get me this, a coffee, and like a YouTube screen in the middle of this thing, and I'm just going to go to sleep. This is comfortable. You know, I don't have to. It's almost like you want the annoyance of reaching up for that, you know, that 1000K high-end EQ, so that you just have to get out of your chair. There's a certain amount of exercise that engineers have to do just to move and get on the board.
But the whole point that mixing desks are relatively flat is just so that you can see over them, so you can see the musicians performing in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So I mean. Yeah, I mean, that being that the necessity there is to actually see something in front of you, then having to always have your eyes down on your main Raven's control panel to make sure you're pressing the right thing, or if you're holding a fader to make sure that it doesn't slip off. Sort of doesn't seem so practical, really. I mean, you would have thought that if it was possible, then those big mixing desks would have been angled at a much more steep angle a long time ago, but they're not for a reason, because they're really long, lots of controls, and you need to see over them. So
yeah. Well, a lot of them now are doing that. They have computer screens built in. As a matter of fact, with all the touch screen that Stephen Slate was doing, we walked from there, because he was right across from SSL. We walked over to SSL, and they had screens, and theirs was up a little bit. This really expensive one we were looking at, I don't remember what series number it was, but I said to the guy immediately, I was like, oh my God, are those touch screens? Because I just came from Stephen Slate, and if you're offering touch screens, you're staying competitive. And he said, no, they're not. So I'm like, well, you lost it. You missed an opportunity. This thing's already, what, $300,000, and you didn't put touchscreens on this thing? Jesus. And Peter Gabriel owns that company. Come on, man. That guy likes technology. He's got to be doing it. So, so it was really cool. We walked over to Manly, and I love their a lot of their equipment. Their compressors are really good, especially their vocal pre. I can't remember what it's called, but they gave away hats, and so we were wearing the hats, and people just. When we were not at NAMM, we were all walking over to dinner, and there were people looking at our hats like we're Manly. Yeah, you guys are Manly. We realized we had to take the hats off because nobody got it. So as for killer equipment, there were lots of guitar effects people coming up. Just like Dofer has sparked for years the Eurorack revolution, and people get on that bandwagon all the time, and I'm appreciative for it because there's great stuff coming out. WMD is another one that's really good. There was the guitar pedals have become, hey, just you and me. No more Vince. He hates us.
Yeah, Vince is gone.
Anyway. There were a lot of guitar pedal manufacturers, and of course that means bass pedals as well. They're doing all kinds of boutique stuff, and as a matter of fact, I'm a big believer that even though you're using a big board, you can, if you find a good guitar effect that you want to channel to reflect, just throw that into your patch bay, man. It doesn't have to be some rack unit that you run this through. Just plug a guitar pedal into it and run it through there. I do that with rats on vocals a lot because it's a really good pedal for scuffing up vocals pretty heavy. A rat.
Right.
And so when I look at guitar pedals, I almost think of them from a production standpoint of, are they going to be useful? Can I throw them into a track and get something good out of them? And so I'm really happy about all of the boutique pedals that are coming out, manufacturers.
Did you see any of the bass companies like EBS?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other ones, so Mark Bass, maybe Eden, any of that. I guess that's all the guitar area.
Mark is the one that has the kind of bumblebee colors, right? It's got that really bright yellow-orange on the front of it and black letters.
That's right. Yeah. They're from Italy, I think. Mark Bass.
Oh, are they? Yeah, they were definitely there. SRW saw stuff. I get confused on who owns whom anymore. But
SWR is owned by a Fender, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, they were bought out by Fender quite a long time ago. I think back in maybe 10 years ago.
Gotcha. It was funny. There was a lot of people there that were famous that I didn't know because apparently, apparently is the wrong word. I've never been a big follower of the metal scene. When we worked on Guitar Hero Metallica, that was my first time ever hearing Metallica, and I enjoyed it. I really did. I have an appreciation for all music. But when I'm at NAMM and I'm passing the guitarist from Sepultura and just talking to him about stuff because we happen to be at the same booth, and my friend is like, do you know who you're talking to? Actually, it kind of didn't happen that way. I was there talking to him, and then I walked away, and then my friend said, you got to get me a picture with this guy. He's one of my favorite guitarists, and it was the guy I was just talking to. That's what happened. So
you should have said who that guy is. Not Herb Deutsch, that's for sure.
You don't know. You don't even know. They wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Herb Deutsch. Maybe that's not true. But they had a lot of great pre's. We saw a lot of Neve stuff, which is exciting to see. Neve being arguably the Cadillac of boards.
You didn't see Rupert Neve wasn't there, was he himself?
No, I didn't see him anyway. I think he kind of stopped working. Wasn't he removed from the company in 75 or something like that? I mean, so the Rupert Neve name isn't really his anymore, is it? Or doesn't he? Isn't it Doesn't he call it something else? Or maybe it's just the signature, like maybe he did a Prince thing, because I'll see just his signature on stuff. It won't say Neve, but the Rupert Neve signature. Maybe that's what he's doing.
I think I saw a video with an interview with him and was Dave Pensado, I think.
Yeah.
Interviewed him, and I think that was fairly recent. I think he's still tinkering and he's still working on stuff. I don't know how it works from the brand point of view, though.
Yeah, I don't either from the brand. I do know that, yes, he's still working on stuff. But he works on 500 series, is the last I heard, for like lunch boxes and stuff like that, which is really, really, really great. Trying to think of some other things that were exciting. There were a lot of crazy stuff. Like they have the basement at NAMM, and it's similar to Kinsha Hall during E3, where all the kind of not as popular stuff is down there, but actually the more interesting stuff is down there. And so walking in that area, I saw everything from crazy-shaped harmonicas to guitar cellos to, just nutty stuff. And they had a lot of stuff I didn't look at. Like, I've never been a horn player, so I didn't go over there. And I only walked through the drum section. It was a really neat show. But if I had to recap by saying what stood out, it was my heroes and getting to see them. And then next to that was the continuation of really cool things that I know are expensive to do, but people still do them anyway, like still create outboard compressors, and they still create Eurorack synthesizers, and they still work on crazy-shaped guitars. And I think that stuff's important, to add to the world and give people options. But I didn't see anything that really went crazy. Pro Tools announced Pro Tools 12, and now they have a free version again. But their ad for Pro Tools 12, which you guys have probably seen, is pretty much just talking about how you can collaborate online. Now, this would be the third piece of software in my possession that is trying to collaborate online. Ableton tried, and you notice that's not in their menu system anywhere anymore. And then Ohm tried, and I think they still got that thing up and running. I tried it and didn't care for it either. It just seems that even though our bandwidth is better, collaborating online still lacks something. I liken it to the difference between playing D&D around a table with friends or getting on your computer and playing Warcraft together. It lacks some sort of social, interesting mechanic to it that is lost. But hopefully, I wish them luck. I hope it goes well for them.
It's an interesting idea, isn't it? I mean, the idea of collaborating with musicians. It might be a good topic for a future episode, actually. The idea of collaborating with other musicians. I mean, collaborating is one thing, sending over stems and working together on something, but actually playing together when you're not actually in the room and you're just looking at somebody on a screen, trying to squint to see what their facial expression is saying. That's something completely different. And then you do that with like 4 or 5 people for a band context. And I mean, I wonder if it'll ever happen, and I wonder if it will be actually as fun as being in the room with playing in a band with other musicians.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm reading through the chat right now. I should pay attention quicker. I'm looking for any questions that people might have had about NAMM. I didn't see anything on Sonar.
What about Dave Smith?
Oh, yeah, so I talked to Dave Smith. Dave and I are real close. He had the Lindrum there, and he's got this.
Are you serious? Yeah, you just throw that out, or are you actually serious that you know Dave Smith really personally?
I just met him, so I count that as being lifelong friends.
Okay.
I've met Dieter Dofer twice now. We're like cousins.
Right.
So, I borrow money from Dieter at this point. Dave Smith, I asked him about the history of MIDI, and I could tell that he was kind of going into that pitch because people probably ask him that 100 times a day. What gave you the idea? And then when he starts telling me that it was necessary, the technology already existed, they just implemented it to music for music. They had to do some tweaks to this thing that already existed. I don't remember what it was called, just to make it work. And getting all these companies online to create general MIDI so that it could all be shared. I was like, okay, I know that. That was kind of a dumb question.
I mean, you sort of got a feel from him as well. I mean, everybody would ask him the same question.
Yeah.
All the time. And he must have told that story countless times.
Probably, yeah. So I apologized and said, tell me something that's really interesting about the new Prophet. And that's when he was telling me about getting the sequential name.
Right.
And I love the Prophet mostly because Peter Gabriel uses it on so many things, and just it's such a Peter Gabriel kind of sound that I really just love the Prophet. And it was also Sequential Circuits was the first synth I ever owned. It was had a number 1 on it somewhere. I don't remember what it was called. a really long time ago. This is 83 or 4. So again, there wasn't like anybody had done anything crazy. It's just that more of the same, and actually that's good in my book, that especially that synthesizers are still being made. That's important, I think, rather than just software all the time.
It's very it's quite inspiring, really. I mean, you look at the way that film photography is going. Film photography is maybe the last one that has yet to see any real, well, not that I know of, a real resurgence. But I mean, vinyl sales last year, like the highest that they've been in the past decade.
Yeah.
Like really soaring up there, and it's of course with the Eurorack and the modular phenomenon, revolution, renaissance.
Yeah.
It's it's fantastic that those old really. It's just really interesting how something like this, which is purely linked with technology, has come full circle. Where normally, for example, computers, we're not racing back to our abacuses to do calculations there, are we? We're like charging forward with, and like mobile phones, we're not our mobile phones are huge now, but they're not like shoulder packs with cables that run down in an actual phone piece that you hold and an antenna. It's just interesting.
I thought they were.
Well, in the rest of the world, I'm not sure about over there in Carl Johnson world, but yeah, it's just interesting that the technology, something that's related directly to the advancement of technology, has even come full circle to now. People are releasing new products with control voltage gates. I mean, that's incredible. That's the whole reason that MIDI was invented.
Yeah, to get away from that. Now it's back.
Yeah.
So I forgot to mention one more guy. So I love a mellotron, and I've said it before on this show that anytime I do orchestral work, I always put a mellotron in there. It's kind of like my secret signature to warm up strings. You will always find a mellotron somewhere if you listen close enough on things I've worked on. And the people that made the mellotron lost rights to it. And this guy, correct me, chatties, where I'm wrong, because it gets a little bit confusing. Because a lot of people, G Media for one, will release mellotron software. Right beside Dieter Doepfer was a guy who had what he called the Portatron, but it started with an M, like Mobiletron or something like that. And it looked like like just the top half of a mellotron. Do you guys know what a mellotron looks like?
Isn't it like a? No, I don't. I've never seen one. I've only seen pictures. It's like a small organ, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than like a cabinet that you would have under a sink in a bathroom. It's a little bit wider than that and a slight bit taller than that, but it's about that size. And it was basically the first sampler. Under every key, the piano key that you'd push down was a quarter-inch of tape. And you could record 3 different samples on that. And oftentimes it would be, I think the default samples that came with it was like boys choir, strings, and flute, I think. And the flute from Strawberry Fields is that flute. And the strings pretty much you hear in every prog band that ever existed in the 70s, Genesis, and anyway, Queen. It was used everywhere. But anyway, so you would hold down a chord. You would set a dial to say what sample you wanted to be on, like strings, and you'd hold down a chord, and that tape for those 3 notes that you held down would start rolling, and they would play just that sample. And that sample, of course, like today, was in key with the note. So if you were at A4, it was an A4 of a string section recorded, all playing at A4. You know what I mean? And so, and then after 8 seconds, I think it's 9 seconds if you had the master tapes. After 8 seconds, it would stop, and there was a spring that would shoot the tape back to 0 so you couldn't hold chords. You had to make sure you moved on before 8 seconds had passed. So the people who I love that thing, and the people who made it lost the name to it, closed down shop, whatever. It was actually, I think, invented by a guy named Chamberlain, who was an American, but England is where mellotron was from, and they took his idea and ran with it, and probably partnered with him, I'm sure, at the beginning. And so you can get these old Chamberlain sounds too, which are way different than the mellotron sounds. They're older and they're really cooler. So this guy named Marcus Resch is, as far as I know, the owner now of the official mellotron name. And the factory where mellotrons were made in England is on the street called Streatley. And the factory has the old employees in there who used to make the mellotron, and they started making real mellotrons again, but they can't call them mellotrons, so you get these Streatleytrons. So you can still spend $5,000 and buy a Mellotron, but it's made by Streetly, or you can go to Marcus Resch and get his company's building real Mellotrons, and they're actually called Mellotrons. And then there's this other guy on the other side by Dieter Dofer who's making some electronic Mellotron, and I'm just
wow.
You can get CDs, software, the real thing from 2 or 3 different sources. It's very confusing. But I was kind of embarrassed because I was talking to Marcus Resch because I saw he had a real Mellotron, and I went over and he was explaining it. And I was explaining to the guys I was with. They'd never seen one. And Marcus was super, super nice. He even pulled out the tape decks for us so you could see this like row, this big metal it's almost like a loom of just cassette tapes, and you drop it in, and you get, that's how you changed patches 3 at a time. You pull out those 3, have another 3, and you put it in, you put this top down, you screw down these screws, you put the lid on, you start playing. Of course, it's completely out of tune. Those things were known for always falling out of tune and wobble because all these tape heads were moving. No, go ahead.
Just sorry to interrupt. We have a few. Matt in the chat room has been asking a few times. He's wondering whether you saw the Phenol by Kilpatrick Audio.
I did not.
How about Paul Vo or any new Moog guitar perma-sustain stuff, which is being asked by Nemlo the Lazy?
Yeah, Paul Vo they had the Moog guitar there, and he did the design on the first Moog guitar. I've played that before. That is really amazing. And also, Paul Vo did a Kickstarter for a guitar he was creating, and as a matter of fact, I owed a CD. I didn't buy the guitar, but I think I went in as high as getting a CD for this new guitar. I did not see him there, but I saw signs of him there and his amazing way of doing things. Sorry about the interruption, but the thing about Marcus was that he was super cool, and it's great. For $5,000, you can get a Mellotron this day, and that is a pretty amazing thing with all this modern technology. And of course, I'm not doing him justice. He actually, for $3,000, sells a tabletop sample-based version, which this other guy by Dieter Dofer was also doing. And for $2,000, he has an even smaller one that he sells, and they sound amazing. So if you're looking for a really cool synth that does some amazing stuff, look there too, because you can replace those samples with other things, bird chirps, found sounds, all kinds of stuff that you create. I guess that's the highlights of NAMM for me.
So we also have, there was Omnisphere 2 came out, and Logic Pro X 10.1. We're not going to be, we wanted to talk about Logic Pro X 10.1, but Mike said, if you do it when I'm not there, then I'll murder all of you. So
that's true. He said that.
So we're going to take that seriously, I think.
But I'm moving on to the next thing. I've hogged this whole darn show. It's a NAMM recap, but now we're going to move on to stuff. I'm sorry, guys, that we all participate in. I want to talk to Vince about the Tascam deal with SoundForge, and also I wanted to talk about Redmatica. Do you guys remember Redmatica? And they had a software particularly called Auto Sampler. Do you guys ever use that?
No, I didn't. What is it? Actually, I don't know that.
Okay, I'll recap really quickly. It would send signals to your hardware devices. You had to plug in MIDI and you had to plug in audio to basically EXS sampler. And it would send MIDI information to keys to engage them on your hardware, and then record that audio directly in. Because typically when you're sampling an instrument, you have to hit each note and record it, clean it up, do all that stuff to the WAV file, load it into a sampler, and now after a laborious 5 or 6 hour process, you've got your synthesizer, now in a sampler format. This thing would auto do that. It would send out notes, bring back the audio, clean it up, put it in the sampler, and then within 10 or 15 minutes, you'd have your, motif now in a sampler format so that you could use it in a software format. So Apple bought them out and shut them down. No, don't do good things. You stop, you. People like that. Quit it. And they just, with 10.1 Logic, and this is the only thing I'm going to say about it because Michael murderized me, is that Redmatica's Auto Sampler, now owned by Apple, is now available in 10.1 Logic. Actually, you have to have Mainstage 3.1, but the two of them together supply you with the information to do that again. So now all this old hardware synthesizer stuff, your DX7, your D50s, whatever, you can go, you don't have to buy a library, just bring up Logic and Mainstage and bring it in.
Do they have ways to do round robin with that? Like actually sampling the same note, say like 5 times, so you can get a little bit of variation there?
I don't remember. It sounds like that would be smart to include that in the software, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes, but I never actually investigated to see if that existed. As a matter of fact, I can bring up Auto Sampler, but I would crash the show with Google hating us like they do. So
what do you think about the subscription plan now, and also the free version of... now, wait a minute. Sonar's gone subscription, and Pro Tools has gone free.
Yeah, Pro Tools was free before. I think it just have to go free because, they got to compete in the market. What they really should do is focus on their MIDI capabilities because it's crap. I didn't mean to get emotional there. Yeah, I don't know about Sonar. I haven't paid attention to Sonar since 2007. Honestly, I haven't even opened it or looked at it.
Vince is the guy to talk about.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was actually debating for a long time whether I should keep on going with it because of the announcement of the subscription model. And actually before that, I was thinking about it because of Cakewalk's acquisition by Gibson. And we all know how Gibson has a wonderful track record of dealing wonderful things with their software acquisitions, back in the day with opcode software.
Not only software, Vince. Carl, do you remember Tobias Basses? They were bought out by Gibson and then run into the ground.
And I walked by a booth, and my head just jerked, and I said, "Those are Tobias Basses because they're gorgeous. I've always loved Tobias Basses, and they have a different name on them, but the same shape. Gibson gave it
MTB now, I think. Is Tobias.
I couldn't even tell you. It didn't even stick in my brain. I was so sad. I was butthurt, man. I was like, "Oh, come on, those are Tobias's." Oh, anyway, I love Tobias Basses.
Go on, Vince.
Yeah, but Gibson is doing their thing with Cakewalk, and one of the big things that they did was they decided to make it a subscription-based system. Although it is possible to purchase the software outright, which I ended up doing with much consternation last week. I decided to purchase it because that upgrade price was $149 for me. And I'm one of those guys, it's my yearly Cakewalk Sonar tax. I decided I will live with a yearly Cakewalk Sonar tax. And it seems like that's what I got, although they're also making it more explicit that purchase price includes a year of technical support. And you can do that, or you can subscribe to the software for, depending on what your experience with Sonar is, or if you want to get a lighter version of Sonar, anywhere between $15 a month and $50 a month. You don't have full access to the software. You got monthly access, and for that month, you also get technical support. And okay, I think I can deal with this. Prior to this, I think they did an about face last month, because for a while they were intimating that in order to purchase Sonar, you would actually have to go through a distributor as opposed to their own online store. And that was really weird to me, because for the longest time, you could just buy stuff straight from Cakewalk. They would ship it to you, or you can download it straight from their website. But I imagine that this is just one of those Gibson things that was raising its head for a while. Hey, if you want to upgrade to your new version of Sonar, I know you purchased it straight from us for the last 5-6 versions, but if you want to upgrade, actually you have to get it from Sweetwater or some other store or distributor. And I think people railed against that, and actually with this version we were finally able to just get it straight from Cakewalk. So I think if they didn't do that, I would have much more seriously considered making that final jump to Reaper, but alas, I am still a Cakewalk Sonar user.
Was Reaper in the number 2 spot there for you, Vince? Was that what you were considering to go to? Because I remember you, I think in a tweet you said you were considering different options and wondering, which way you should go.
Yeah, I was. Actually, before Sonar, I had some experience with Cubase, and I rather liked it. I actually really liked Digital Performer even back in the day, but I like my PC. I like Cakewalk Sonar. I like Reaper as well, but in the end, with the way that my projects were working out, I decided I'm going to stick with Cakewalk for at least this time, and all the way through the duration of my current major projects. And maybe later on down the line, I'll make a transition to Reaper, which just seems to be such a great piece of software, and especially one done by mostly a single person as opposed to some large company that doesn't seem to always listen to you, even if you do pay that $149 for a year of technical support.
I mean, arguably, the reason that Reaper has become what it has become is because the developer listens to the user base so much. So, if you have if you can make a really, really good case for needing a certain feature in Reaper, then you can probably get it done. And if everybody does that, then you get Reaper, which is what it is. You right-click, and the context menu takes up half of your screen.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. I actually enjoy buying stuff that doesn't have the best support from their parent companies. I actually just bought a piece of hardware from a company that's actually, in my experience, not the best when it comes to technical support. I actually just got this little Tascam portable recorder because I could not argue with the deal proposition. So if you go on B&H right now, B&H Photo Video, and you get one of these Tascams, there's the Tascam DR60D Mark II, and then there's the Tascam DR70D. This is actually the Tascam DR70D, and it's a really decent piece. For $300, I get this 4-track recorder with 4 pretty decent preamps and 2 built-in microphones as well. And it's got good functionality, it sounds good, it's got decent battery life, and thrown in the package, for some reason, is a full copy of SoundForge Pro 11. Like, how does that work? This is a $300 piece. SoundForge Pro 11 retails for $400. If you want to upgrade that thing, it's $150. But still, with the purchase of a $300 or even a $200 hardware piece, which is actually pretty decent hardware, you get SoundForge Pro 11. And so I decided to get that. Hey, I've got a new field recorder. I'm going to retire my Zoom, or at least put it on backup status. But Tascam, my last experience with them, I had crap for customer service. If I didn't like the product, hey, just return it, whatever. We don't really need you as a customer, blah, blah, blah. But hey, you can't argue with this deal. Holy crap.
Is Pro Tools that comes with it, is it for Windows and Mac or just Windows?
You get a choice of, when I talked to B&H, actually, they actually gave me a choice of Mac or Windows, which was really crazy. On the item description, they actually specifically say SoundForge Pro 11. But when I was talking to the B&H guys, and it's only available on B&H, it's not at the other stores like Adorama, or if you try to get a bundle on Amazon, there's nothing that quite approaches it. But the customer service at B&H, which is also pretty good, by the way, they actually gave me a choice of if I wanted the Mac version bundled with my recorder instead of the PC version.
So it's not hybrid, huh?
No, it's not hybrid. SoundForge there are 2 rather distinct versions that have been developed for SoundForge, and I have kind of a weird relationship with the Mac version. It's too bad Jack is. Oh, maybe Jack is around, because he could actually remark on that. He probably knows those issues with the Mac version versus the PC version.
Vince, have you ever used Adobe Audition? Because I think Jack was actually considering making a switch from SoundForge to Audition.
I saw that on Twitter, yeah.
Yeah. I actually like the little bit that I've used of Audition. I tried it back in the Adobe CS2 and CS3 days, and I always thought it was a pretty good piece of software. And in some alternate universe, Audition might be my go-to editor, but SoundForge has always been the thing that I was used to. I mean, I like Audition. There are some things that Audition has built in that strike me as sort of isotope RX light, which is really nice. Yeah, some of the things with editing in the spectral view and the noise reduction functionality in Adobe Audition versus similar functionality in SoundForge, I always thought it was really good.
Yeah, I've been using Creative Cloud Audition since it came out with Creative Cloud, and that's fine for my. The interface is a bit clunky. I mean, the same with a lot of those pro Creative Cloud apps like Premiere as well. It's sort of the functionality is there and it's quite easy to use, but the interfaces can be a little bit kind of fiddly. But yeah, Audition, especially if you've got Creative Cloud, it's certainly a great thing. And there are a lot of other options there now. It's like DSP Quattro and the audio file engineering one called
Triumph.
Triumph, yeah, that's it.
Yep. I wanted to bring up a couple things about NAMM before we sign off, just before I forget. I didn't want to ignore Omnisphere. I went to their presentation, and of course, it's amazing. What are you going to say about Omnisphere? I personally don't own a copy because I hear it everywhere. I'm so afraid to use it, and I hear patches online, or I hang out with a friend who's composing and he's using it. And I'm like, oh, I heard that. Heard that in this video game. I heard that in that video game. So that scares me away from Omnisphere. But what is it? Piersing is doing is just amazing work, man. It's almost like, and sometimes I feel like I'm cheating because you can hit. Like, anytime I have something where I can hit one key and like a whole thing happens, I feel like I ripped somebody off, like I'm cheating or somehow on that soundtrack, and I make it harder on myself than it should be. But we have this friend named Alex May who makes it way harder on himself than it should be. You ever met him, Alex?
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
He's a guy who designs every single sound that he ever puts in anything.
Yeah, actually no, I have heard of him. You don't want to talk. No, he's just weird. No,
I think he's amazing, but he's a glutton for punishment in some ways.
There's this fantastic guy in our chat room called Nemlo the Lazy who just said that masochism and game development is a winning combination.
Yeah, that's so true.
Masochism and writing music for games, obviously they just go hand in hand.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure. And also orchestral tools. If you guys don't use orchestral tools, I use their Strings Run, I use their Berlin. Really, really good stuff. They had a booth there, and they were doing a demonstration. And I told this to Mike Shapiro. I said, they had this demonstration where it was an accurate live demonstration where it would accurately change from legato to staccato to, whatever, depending upon how the guy played. So if he was playing these long runs and then started tapping a string, it would immediately start doing staccato on whatever was assigned to that key. But what was cool is he could do that with 3 or 4 fingers, not just one. And Mike said, I set that stuff up in whatever he uses, Logic. But what I was impressed with is that he didn't go, the orchestral tools guy didn't go in and spend a half hour setting up those velocity ranges. He just played, so that's a big difference, because at first when Mike said, well, you can do that, but you could, just set up some velocity ranges, and I thought, well, I didn't argue with him at the time because I wasn't thinking about it. It's like, yeah, I guess you're right, you could do that. But then it dawned on me later, I was like, well, why do I want to do that? If I can get a software that just does it for me, that's even better. So check out Orchestral Tools, what they're doing, and it's called Capsule, I think is what the software was called. So they had a great demo there, too.
Cool.
So I had one more thing I wanted to talk about. You guys got anything before I take over?
You have 1 more minute.
Yeah, I'll talk. It might be 2 minutes. So a friend of mine's building a studio up here, and he put in a 56-channel Neve 8108 board.
Oh, wow.
Look up 8108. It is amazing board, and the bands that recorded on that board, not a board like it, but that particular board is endless. It's unbelievable how many bands recorded on that thing. All walks of life. Barbara Streisand has recorded on that board, to Megadeth recorded on that board. It's just all over the place. He actually tracked down one of the engineers who recorded on that board, and he has 4 platinum records from that board alone. It's pretty amazing pedigree. So Sam had a studio here in town. It was more a rehearsal studio, but they would offer some like low-end recording. And he's decided to expand into a bigger place, and he found this board and he put it in there. So I'm helping him build his production studios. And I started pulling out all this old recording equipment that I've had forever. And I pulled out this old 4-track tape recording deck and the board that goes with it, which is a Tascam Series 10. Or if you search Google for Tascam Model 10, you'll see it. And he got that thing up and running. I haven't used that. He got it up and running, and it's amazing. And so in that particular production room, there's going to be like wood paneling, a 70s like beanbag chair, like some lava lamps, that board, and this tape deck that goes with it so you can record quad sound, because that's what that board did. It was before surround sound, so it did quad sound. But in addition to that, we threw a Mac in there with Pro Tools on it, and monitors, computer monitors, and listening monitors. The same white cones you see behind me are going in there. Not those, but I mean like those. So it's high-end Yamaha monitoring. So it's really, you're getting a production studio in this particular room that's high-end, but looks like it's super old-fashioned. And then he's patch-banging in from this live room. Mike Shapiro went to look at it, and I asked Mike, I said, how many orchestral musicians could you get in here? And he said, probably 20 to 25. So it's a really big room where you could record a big orchestra on an ancient Neve board, run them to tape or to Pro Tools. So here's what I'm telling people that are watching the show. He's still doing some construction, so it's not open yet to the public. But if you guys want to come up and see it, email me at kyle@moontechstudios.com. I'll organize an event, like maybe a barbecue in his parking lot, and we'll just go through and look at the thing. Because I would love to see some people get out of town, come up to Ventura, we're not that far away, and check out this Neve, man. His vocal booth is right beside it, solid as a rock. I mean, he's done so much work. And the place where he put it was it was a bar at one time, just a very huge bar, and he had nothing in there. He didn't have studs. So he filled every room and everything. He's done quite a job. He's got a stage. He does live bands that'll come in there sometimes to kind of just do a one-off. We want to bring in some friends and play for him. And he's like, okay, you can have my live room for however much an hour. So totally high-end studio, still under construction a little bit, but I think you guys should come check it out. So I wanted to send out the invitation for people. Contact me. I'll organize something. We'll go over there, and we'll take a look at what he's got.
Sounds good. Sounds awesome.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I might be a little late, like 1 or 2 days late, but sounds good.
I'll do it during GDC so you can come. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm actually going to move my studio that you see here over to one of his rooms. I'm going to rent it from him because I kind of hate getting up and walking into my studio. I don't go anywhere, Like sometimes it'll be 3 days and I'll realize I never even went outside. I didn't even get the mail, So I'm looking forward to kind of just renting a space off of him just to get my butt out of my own studio, and I'm going to recreate my production studio, move it over to his, and so there's
Sounds
40.
Good.
Go ahead.
When is that going to happen?
Probably in the next month. Probably I'll be broadcasting from there then.
Wow. See, that sounds like the beginning of a show there. The process of moving from one state of your living existence to, oh, wait, I'm working on something. And that's something I always have to deal with every single project that I do, because I'm usually doing different projects in different states. Like, oh, I'm in an office setting here. I'm going to be on site in a non-treated space here. I'm doing this stuff at work here. And I'm constantly thinking about the ideal way to actually, go about my day in order to make my working in that day most effective.
Yeah, I would do that. I would love to film the whole process of me, like, rewiring everything, because that's a nightmare, but people don't know, like, some of the cheats that you get to rewiring, like wrap your cables before you plug them in. People don't know that. They think, oh, I'll plug in all these wires, and all these wires are hanging off. What I do is I take all my wires, and I bundle them, I label them, and then I plug them in so that when I'm done, I'm not pulling them out with my elbow because I'm under the desk. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe I should do that. Is just like give some of the cheats of how to set up equipment in a more user-friendly manner. But you're right, Vince. Having all these different states of work it can break your brain too, right? Do you have any place where you go where you're not as creative as the other?
Oh man, lately actually home has been absolutely horrible for me. I haven't been able to do very good work at home. It must be a combination of waking up sick and the very strange situation that I've got in this apartment that I'm renting, which has a combination of ants, spiders, and a non-working heater. So, but I really like going out and going in a place that is not the place that I'm resigned to my fate as I tuck myself in for sleep at midnight.
I'm going to have to jump off in a moment, guys. But a lot of guys in the chat room are saying that we should organize a meetup at GDC. I think we should. Why don't we see if we can discuss that next week?
Okay, I think that would be great. That's just a month away, so let's do it.
Yeah, it's only like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
No way, it's that close already?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Yes, let's do that, and maybe we could broadcast a show there. But then if we do that, then nobody will be in our chat room. We'll all be like on camera. Tell your family and friends.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it, man. Let's rent a huge hall and fill it with 8 people and do a show.
No. We steal a room from GDC and. Hey, this is a room that's organized for the main conference, but they don't have those rooms set up yet for the main conference because they're doing all the summits, which are in different buildings.
Make it outside the GDC buildings though, because I'm not actually going to GDC itself. I'm just going to be there.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. March 2nd.
We'll do it in your hotel room. We can all.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off and say thank you for coming, everybody. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on Twitter and subscribe to us. Or no, tweet us on. I don't know, and then something on Twitter and do the other thing on YouTube that you do when you're on YouTube.
Like on YouTube, yes. Like.
Yeah, do it for all of us, and please spread the word because we love doing the show. And actually, guys, I'm going to start reaching out after our year's done. I think it's fair for us to start reaching out to some sponsors. Maybe we can get some stuff like I know Isotope sponsors Sonic State, and they give away something every show. Maybe we can talk them into doing that for us. So the more people that we have watching the show, the more interested, people like Isotope are in supporting the show. And so please pass around the word. And with that, I'll say, voila. Not au revoir, but voila.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.